Hey folks, David Stewart here. Don't forget to hop on my mailing list, dvspress.com/list. I wanted to share a funny little picture here, which is actually, I don't think from Disney. I think a fan made this based off of some casting announcements. I think this was like an artistic rendering, perhaps, of Ariel and her seven daughters from the live action remake of The Little Mermaid coming out from Disney. And this asks an interesting question, or asks, we have some questions from watching this, let's say, which is, how does Ariel have seven daughters with such diverse genetics involved? How did this come to be? I wonder if kids are going to ask this question. Well, we have two possible answers. Either King Triton, who is, by the way, played by Javier Bardem, either gets around them seven seas quite a bit, or else Ariel's mom is very good at explaining away why all of her daughters happen to be so phenotypically divergent from one another. I find it really quite funny. Like when you take something like diverse casting and woke casting to an extreme, you end up with something that is as hilarious as this, which is seven daughters of seven different, very different ethnicities, all being daughters. And that implies some very interesting sexual habits from their parents. Either King Triton is a major player, or else he's a major cuck. And I think in this movie, we're probably going to have Ariel's mom be dead or something, which means, are there seven other dead moms? Did Ursula kill all the moms? Did Triton do away with them? Does he breed with them and then toss them to the side? What kind of fish do they do they reproduce like mollies, where there's actually a phallus involved, or sharks? Or do they reproduce like, I don't know, salmon, where it's like you squirt out the eggs and the sperm and then die? Or something. Obviously King Triton doesn't die, but maybe the moms squirt out the eggs and die, and King Triton squirts out some sperm, and then the daughters hatch, or something like that. Or maybe they're all adopted. I wonder how they're going to explain this. But yeah, when you decide that you're going to emphasize representation for every person under the sun, you end up with some pretty ridiculous things. Yes, Disney is remaking The Little Mermaid. So this is a question I get sometimes. What's with all of these Disney live action remakes of classic movies? And the answer is they don't have any creativity. That's the first answer. Hollywood is not very creative. It's not creative on the surface level, where they're always doing remakes, reboots, sequels. I went and saw the Mario movie, and I did a review of it on the channel. And for the previews of that Mario movie, which is, of course, based on a worldwide previously existing popular IP, every single preview, except for one, every single preview, and there was like 8 or 10 of them because it was like opening weekend, was for a previously existing IP. In other words, it was a sequel or a remake of something that already exists, some kind of movie that already exists, not even a new adaptation of like a book that was popular, which is something that you used to be able to expect. But it was 100% wall-to-wall remakes. There was even a sequel from like a sitcom movie about old women. I'm like, they made a sequel to this old lady movie instead of bothering to make anything new. And that's what Hollywood delivers, I guess, to the mainstream, at least. There's still new movies that come out here and there. There's still independent movies that are new. But when we're talking about the stuff that's trying to command popular attention, it's all sequels. Every single movie poster I saw in the theater was for a sequel. Nothing new. Really, really nothing new under the sun there at all. So the first answer is they're creatively bankrupt. They can't make new stories. They don't understand storytelling. Even when they did make new stories, they tend to stick to highly formulaic versions of stories, like from Blake Snyder's Save the Cat. That's very popular in Hollywood. Which, I don't know, I'll do some content on that screenwriting manual. There's probably some value to glean from it. For the most part, you're going to create stuff that's garbage. Blake Snyder, the guy who wrote it, the only two movies that I think have his name on it for credits is Stop or My Mom Will Shoot and Blank Check. I think it was Blank Check. So those two movies were the only ones that he has credits on, which are both pretty bad movies. But he wrote the screenwriting manual. And it's, it's what it is. People in Hollywood write extremely formulaic things. They write with very strict lengths, like 110 minutes, things like that, or 100 minutes, Actually, it's actually 105, like on the dot, to get things exactly right. Kind of like TV has very strict time limits to it. But they don't do anything new for that reason. Also because bean counters are involved, and it's a risk, right? If you do something new, you could lose money. If you just do another reboot or another sequel, you'll probably break even. And because you're riding on the success of the past movies, you don't have to hire good writers. You don't have to bring your A game to any sequel, because you know people will come watch it even if it's not very good. And that's one of the reasons sequels tend to decrease in quality. I've talked about the corporate IP cycle, where you have a creation or birth, then you have an explosion phase. So phase 1, creation, phase 2, explosion. That's where things get really popular. Usually you have something that's getting unexpectedly popular, that originally started with a cheap budget. That's phase 1. Phase 3 is milking, and that's where you're trying to recover all the investment from it. So you just make a bunch of different series, sequels, toys, tie-in merchandise, whatever you can that's as cheap and easy to make as quickly as possible and at scale, in order to recover as much money until it dies. That's phase 4. Phase 5 is the reboot, and that's what Hollywood is continually trying to do, is to reboot things. And if it's successful, if people go and watch the reboot, you go back to phase 3 milking until it dies again. Star Trek has done this many, many times. It dies, gets rebooted, brought back, gets a little bit popular, gets milked until it's dead, gets rebooted with a new series, gets brought, people watch it, it gets milked until it's dead. Star Trek's done this like 6 times. Star Wars has done this at least 3 times. And that's just the way that it goes. I guess a deeper question too would be, is it even possible to create something at the level of Star Wars that's new post 2000, post Cultural Ground Zero, 1997? Where the internet takes over and we're all fractured into our little spaces, and corporations are no longer able to kind of harness that level of creativity to take the risks that it took in the 90s, and produce something that costs a lot of money, that's high concept, that people will buy or watch in mass. I don't even know if it's possible to do that anymore. I think you kind of have to have at least something prior existing. It has to be something like Lord of the Rings, something that's really popular beforehand. A really popular book like Twilight that you can then make a movie for, that you're already in the milking phase. You're just kind of capitalizing on the pre-existing value of the movie. Hunger Games or something like that. It's really rare to see a new movie that's popular, like a blockbuster movie, that is not a sequel at this point. Now, I remember 20 years ago, I'd go to the movies and we'd see blockbusters that were brand new IPs all the time. Things that have probably been forgotten by now, but they were really popular at the time. One-off original movies that people really like to go watch. You just don't see those anymore. And I think part of it is that risk, that it's like, you just don't know how to create a movie that could do that for people, that people would actually go like command their attention. They just won't do it. So that's why you get all of these really bad remakes. And if it's anything like what we've, what we can experience beforehand with these remakes, this is going to be another bad one, guys. It's going to be bad. I don't really have to tell you it's going to be bad. There's no reason to go watch it. Instead of watching it, you could just watch the animated movie again, which I can virtually guarantee you will be superior in every conceivable way. It'll be aesthetically superior. It'll be narratively superior. I already read that they added an hour to this one. An hour. They're not going to they're not going to give you the story from Hans Christian Andersen about the mermaid gaining an eternal soul by putting away her own desires. That's way too serious an ending for a kids movie in 2023. So it's just going to be a bloated version of the movie you already know. Just watch the original movie. You don't need to watch the Bad Beauty and the Beast remake, where people anachronistically make some comment about women reading. Novels were created for women in the 18th century. It's nonsense. You don't have to watch anything like that. Just watch the original, right? So if you see a remake coming out, just skip it and watch the original. It's really easy. If that's something that you love, if you love Little Mermaid, don't watch this. Just watch the original. This is kind of a Brown M&M test, which is like they didn't really care to make any kind of coherency to the mermaid, Ariel, being from a Danish fairy tale and having sisters that would presumably be from a European fairy tale. They're not even consistent with each other. It's not like they race swapped all of them. They just race swapped they did race swap all of them but one, but not in the same direction, like in different directions. So the like the Brown M&M test, which I talked about, there's no reason to take something like this seriously. So just go watch the original if that's something that you're really interested in, and leave the bad remakes for the birds. Listen, guys, I will see you next time. Leave me your thoughts down below about King Triton and his sexy harem of fish mermaids that he's been mating with to produce all of these lovely daughters. And, whether you think kids would actually ask these questions or be perplexed by the fact that the siblings don't look anything alike with each other. Are they aware of race? I mean, they're not as aware of race as like adults are, obviously, but I think it's a funny question that's kind of left up by this casting. And again, I don't think Disney created this image. I think an artist created it. But I sure do find it funny. So you let me know what you think down below about this little image here. And I will see you all next time. Have a great one.